Good afternoon. I am Counselor Dee Knudsen, and I am chairing our informational meeting for Monday, February 11th, and that's well, I'd like to say a beautiful February day out there, but at least spring is around the corner, I hope. We will start out today with our weekly report from our City Clerk's office. Deborah Owen.
Thank you, and good afternoon, Sioux Falls City Council. Just a brief update to let you know that we now have 3 candidates running in the Northeast District seat, so we are happy to see some people come in this morning and sign up for that. Otherwise, just to remind everyone, there is a Public Services Committee following this meeting, and that's about it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Deborah. And at this time, Mayor, would you like to introduce your guests and our guests today?
We have people from the Coliseum Committee that are here today to give us an update of the progress of where we're at. So I think we're going to be led off by Dana Dykehouse. If you want to come forward, Dana, that'd be great.
Thank you, Mayor Munson. Should we just proceed? We'll have about a half-hour presentation. I think that you'll all see that on your computer screens. We appreciate the opportunity to be here today and share with you some of the work that has gone on over the last few months by an ad hoc group of community-minded individuals. I'd like to start today by reading a couple of things from the Argus Leader. The headline was, "The Civic Arena for Sioux Falls moves into the active planning stages." A.J. Jordan, chairman of the steering committee, said that the meeting was for orientation and activation, with no attempt being made into the pros or cons of various things such as sites, method of finance, or how the campaign will be conducted. Jordan urged his committee to work almost immediately, pointing out that for a city to grow, it must look ahead. He said, "Let's plan for 20 and 30 years from now. It is our children who will reap the most benefit of our work if a new civic arena is built." Jordan was most emphatic on his idea that thinking on the proposed arena must be wide open. "We have made no plans. We have no decisions to make today. It is up to the committee to find out what the people of Sioux Falls want in order to keep ours a key city in this area." A few months later, civic leaders, the headline was, "Civic leaders put the top priority on the arena project." H.J. Peckham, president of the Cosmopolitan Club, "I would build a sports arena capable of seating 10,000 people. As the largest city in the state, we should have the best facilities in the state for handling large crowds." What's interesting about those 2 articles is they were from January and July 1955. In looking at the archives of our own Argus Leader, what our committee found was exactly the same decisions, exactly the same discussions, exactly the same considerations were before this community in 1955 through 1957 that we have today. And those leaders in that community and those community-minded people were looking forward 20 and 30 years and saying, what does this community need in 20 and 30 years? And they came up with a plan that I will share some of the contents of that plan and how it is very similar to some of the conclusions we came up with today. Let me start by saying, how did we get to this point and what brought this committee together? Well, it was just a few months ago that we were approached by a number of community leaders were approached by the Sioux Falls School District because we had helped with the turf team, helped with getting artificial turf, something that was long needed at Howard Wood Field. And the school district officials said, we're considering putting between $5 and $6 million into Howard Wood Field, and we will need some private support, some private corporate dollars to help finish the job. We've done that often in this community, where private and public entities have teamed up for the community good, and they were looking to do this again. But at the time that was proposed, we stepped back and said, would we really be doing the right thing simply replacing Howard Wood with a facility that is exactly the same in capacity for the next 40 to 50 years as it has been for the last 40 or 50 years? Shouldn't we step back and think for a moment what this community will need 20 and 30 years from now, rather than simply creating what we currently have? Think back to those meetings in 1955 through 57 and the audacious plan to go way out in the country and build a new Howard Wood Field and an arena. That had to be radical thinking at that time, but it was thinking that has served us well for more than 50 years. We said at the time, let's take a look at that, and that's what we've done. What will we need 20 or 30 years from now? In addition to that, we combined that thinking with the results of an Argus Leader poll from October of 2007, which said that a new events center for this community was a top priority of the citizens. Well, combined with that poll and combined with the thought that the school district needed new facilities for Howard Wood, we said, let's get a group together and really explore what things could look like. What could be possible for 20 and 30 years from now? What could we build that our children and grandchildren would look back on and say that group of leaders was wise in their decision of what they did? I'd like to take just a moment and thank those volunteers: Mayor Dave Munson, Kathy Clark, Mark Benedetto, Arnie Garson, Dave Rosenboom, Bob Winkles, Bill Peterson, Jeff Scherschlick, Tom Everest, Ham Holman, and Kelby Krabanoff. All were instrumental in providing research and providing counsel to our committee as we began exploring what the possibilities could be for our future. I'd also like to take a moment and thank Brad Coleman, who will walk us through the PowerPoint, and John Paulson. They have both been loaned to us by Sanford Health, and their input, their research, their doggedness in going after the facts has truly been a benefit to this committee. Well, if you would, we'd like to walk through a PowerPoint today. And this PowerPoint really doesn't answer all the questions. In fact, what our goal is today is to ask for two things. To ask for the school district, we will ask later this afternoon for the school district to delay their decision on Howard Wood Field, because if we redo Howard Wood Field at its exact site, we will have just the same facility for the next 30 or 40 years, and we think we should step back and pause on that. And then we would ask that you, the city council, and the mayor appoint an official committee, someone who can take official action to look into this matter further. We've done some research, we've got some suggestions, but as an ad hoc committee, we have no power to act. We don't assume that power, and we would ask you to appoint that official committee to act in our stead and to push this matter along. Let's take a little look, and if you will, at your PowerPoint, at some of the background for our study. One of the first things we said is that Sioux Falls is a growing area. If you look back to 1960, when we completed the two facilities that we're talking about, Howard Wood Field and the arena, we had an MSA, that's the four-county area, of 86,000 people. Today, we have 223,000, and by 2025, we will have over 320,000 people in our MSA. Think about that a minute and think what facilities are needed for a community of that size. Not to just survive, but to thrive, because that's what we want to do. As we said, Howard Wood, or the school board is preparing to spend approximately $6 million on Howard Wood Field. The question is this the best long-term facility solution for each of those schools and for other community activities? As they are in the final stages of planning that, we said let's step back and look and see what really could be possible by utilizing those facilities in maybe a slightly different way, thinking outside of the box. And remember, that $5 to $6 million that the school district is going to spend is only a fraction of what they'll need. They will be coming to the private part of our community for additional funds, just as they did for the field turf. They will need new scoreboards, new locker rooms, additional press box facilities. Those are all things that they will be looking to do privately. So that is a start of the cost, not the total cost. The community's priority is what we said is for updated and expanded facilities. there is tremendous opportunity for us to look for expanded and new events to come to this community. We'll talk about that a little later with our sports authority, but you know, there are things going on around us. Just last week, Sioux City announced the NAIA National Volleyball Tournament is coming to their community in their new facility. 40 teams with fans and people. The economic development is tremendous and the opportunity is out there. New facility in a remodeled arena offers options and expanded opportunities. We think that as we do this and as we will share, the flexibility of seating capacities and venues is important. We need to add more event days to our total list. As you will see in our report, and we will hand that out, one of the challenges we have, and we want you to consider this, is simply by moving our existing activities, primarily our minor league sports, into a new arena does not gain any event days. There will not be the opportunity to expand the number of event days. And one of our plans is to look at expanding those event days by having more facilities and more opportunities. New facilities are critical for economic development and workforce attraction. As you know, and thank you for your investment in Forward Sioux Falls, one of our key priorities is workforce attraction and development. Young people are looking for various venues and various activities within a community. If we want this community to continue to grow, an investment in public facilities is critical. As we said, with your help and with the school board's help, we have created the Sports Authority, and we are seeking new events. The first one we were able to attract was the Summit Conference Basketball Championships that will be held in 2009 and 2010. There are many economic development factors that go into this and that will help our community tremendously if we can accomplish that. But right now, that Sports Authority will be restricted by the number of events they can attract, simply because our facility is used to its capacity today with very little availability of dates. Let's move then to what the objectives of our committee was. And again, I would like to thank that ad hoc committee of community leaders. They stepped forward, sometimes at their own peril, to share their ideas and their thoughts and their concerns as to how we could proceed. And as that committee met, we came up with really 5 objectives that I'd like to share with you today. Our first objective was to enhance and improve the quality of facilities for sports, school activities, and entertainment in our community. I think that's critical, and that drove us. How can we enhance the quality of those facilities for our various sports? I know a lot of people have debated about indoor football versus outdoor football. Well, I got kind of fired up about this year. Our 3 public high schools were in the quarterfinals of the high school football playoffs. They all had tremendous records. Those young people were excited. The bands could have played. It would have been a terrific evening. There was one problem. It was 40 degrees. It was pouring rain, and the wind was blowing 40 miles an hour. There weren't 200 people in the stands. That's a shame. That's a shame, because it would have been the epitome of those young people's experience to play between 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 people that evening, and many people couldn't come just because of the weather. We live in the upper Midwest. There are alternatives to what we have, and alternatives that could enhance the facilities for the benefit of those students and for those fans that want to be there. We wanted to create additional inventory of facilities and seating capacity, expand our number of event days, and I would encourage you to study this report because it talks specifically about the number of event days and what could be possible with expanded facilities, ways in which we could attract many different types of activities to keep pace with regional communities and with the growing community we have right here in Sioux Falls. Many people have thought we've ignored the minor league sports, and we have not. We've met with each of our minor league sports. They are important, and they are a tradition in this community and something that we have that's unique and special to this community. And you will see that our plan talks about improving the venues for our minor league sports, and we think that's important, that they have improved facilities with a plan to enhance the current arena. We want to attract additional collegiate and professional sporting activities and expand other events for economic benefit. And we could, with the increased event days, we could truly have an impact on the economic benefits in our community. And to cooperate. We would need some cooperation on a world-class track and field facility that's currently being developed by the University of Sioux Falls, and cooperation is important. I know some people have said, well, how can a college and a university, or how can a college or university cooperate with the city or the school district to hold track events? How could that come together? Well, I remember in 2003, my daughter played for Roosevelt High School in the state high school basketball tournament held at the Elman Center. Guess what? That cooperation worked just great to have that facility. It can be done if we look at it in a cooperative fashion. As we did this, we came up with some key decision points, and you will see this in your packet. We really looked at two options. Option A is for a larger indoor regulation football format, which would handle additional sports and events, an updated arena, that is the arena refurbished as our primary home for our minor league sports, and holding track at USF's Olympic-sized track. That's option A. That's an option that we can dream about, that we can look at as really a vision for our community. Option B is a smaller basketball and hockey format, additional sports and events, a reconfigured arena, and renovating of Howard Wood Field. This is very similar to what the 2005 study group had looked at. What would it be to simply replace the arena, reconfigure it for convention-type activities, redo Howard Wood, and those would be what our public facilities would look like. Well, as you can imagine, we have a preferred facility plan. Which facility plan is best suited and is sustainable for accommodating and facilitating growth, which provides the seating capacity, the inventory, the parking, and other economic factors. We've looked at this, we've studied it. As you will see in our report, option A to us looks like the way to go. But what we would encourage you to do, again, we will be asking that you appoint an official committee to study those same recommendations. Howard Wood Field renovations, it's scheduled to be funded by the public school district sources, but as we said, further improvements would have to be done by corporate contributions. Many people say, well, we just put field turf out there. Why would you tear it up? Well, in reality, that turf will run out of its life between 2011 and 2012 and need to be replaced, as all types of surfaces have to do. That would be about the same time that this new facility could possibly be opened. Current plans to renovate the facility would have a very similar size and capacity, and I reiterate that because, again, do we want to simply recreate what we currently have for the next 20 or 30 or 40 years? And is that concept adequate for that time frame? We come then to some key decision points. Some key decision points as far as facility funding and options. Should the event center be publicly funded, or should it be a private-public partnership? What we looked at is we looked at 6 similar Midwestern facilities that have been currently constructed. What we found is, if you look at all 6, they were funded publicly 86% of their cost and 14% privately, and 2 of them, and one that we'll use an example of, the Fargo Dome, was 100% publicly financed. So there are many options out there. It was fascinating, again, referring back to the Argus Leader. In July 31st of 1955, the question was, what did other cities do? They looked at Omaha, Des Moines, Sioux City, Milwaukee, Huron, and Aberdeen for comparisons, and did the same comparison work that we did. What's fascinating about that, since that time, Omaha, Des Moines, Sioux City, Milwaukee, and Aberdeen have all built new centers. We are still in the same ones that we have today. We looked at what would it take to make this a debt-free facility, and we'll talk about the Fargo Dome in a minute, but one of our concepts was, could we make this debt-free so there is no, when it opened, it would be paid for and there would be no ongoing costs. And second, then we talked about what is the financial feasibility of parking fees, seat fees, premium seating, and advertising enhancements. I know that's also been a hot button in the community because many people say, well, gee, I don't want to pay for parking. I don't want to pay a seat fee. Where did that idea come from? Well, again, I refer to an article written in January 28th, 1957, and it said since November 1st, 1953, the city has been collecting 10 cents levy on admissions for public entertainment at the old Coliseum. So even back in 1953, our community was levying, at that time, a 10-cent tax on each admission to help pay for those facilities. To get that funded, and when you look at our funding option, there will be two significant steps we will need to take. First off, we have to get approval by the legislature if we would like to implement, as we would suggest, a half-cent sales tax for a short period of time to get this done. That would require legislative approval of the South Dakota legislature, and we would do that in the 2009 legislature. And then, with all probability, the Sioux Falls voters would need to approve this tax in order to fund this type of facility. Let's move on then in our discussion points. Our minor league tenants has been a big part of the discussion, and we had to look at what option would best serve the capacity and financial viability of our minor league sports. Our committee talked to all three of our minor league sports groups that play currently in the arena, and they all said the same thing. Playing, if you simply move them from an existing arena, to a 10 or 12,000 seat arena that was proposed in 2005, their financial model does not work. We show in our report what their average attendance is, from 2,500 to 3,500 fans. That is a venue that works for them. Economically, that can work for them. And a revitalized arena would be a perfect home for our minor league sports for the future. Now, we realize it isn't perfect. It doesn't accommodate all their wishes, but it is an economically viable center, and if you refurbish that, it will be a great opportunity for our fans and our minor league sports to remain viable well into the future. Next key decision point is track and field considerations. The question is, can the Sioux Falls School District Howard Wood Relays, which is a separate entity from the school district, and the South Dakota State High School track meet utilize the USF track complex? One of the interesting things as we discuss this in redoing Howard Wood Field is that in reality, Howard Wood Field is not used very much for track. There are some very important events and there are things that are very important out there, such as the Howard Wood Relays. It's been run for 86 years. It's interesting, however, that Howard Wood's only been around for 50 years. So for 36 of those years, it ran where there used to be a Sears store, and is now a state office building. And again, they moved out, way out in the country at one time, to their new facility. But in reality, we only run track out there for the Howard Wood Relays, the state meet every other year, the Washington Invitational, and the middle school meets. As you look around our community, each and every one of our high schools has a track facility. Our middle schools have a track facility, and the majority of our sons and daughters run their competitive track at their high school tracks. So it is not a lot of track meets that are run out there, and we think that there could be, through cooperation, an opportunity to run at a new Olympic-sized track that has many, many important elements to it that Howard Wood would never have, that could enhance the attractiveness of that as a track facility at the USF facility. One of the things we learned, and this is something that you can just take note of, is as we talk to these different communities and different event centers throughout the upper Midwest, we found that we should consider a single common management firm to maximize the usage and financial viability of the event center, the convention center, and arena complex. If we build this new center, one management group could get some leverage that would help this work. And again, we would suggest that you take note of that as you look forward. Well, what are we looking for? What are our recommendations? As we said, the best suited option, as you study the report and as we will hand out later, is to fully explore option A as the best suited for our community. To look at it as a way in which we can increase inventory, we can increase capacity. There are parking and economic factors that are unique in a private-public partnership. One of the things we found in researching back in 1957 is that one of the leaders in our community stood up and said this. He said, when we complete this facility, we will be the only place in America where you can park and attend all the events at Howard Wood, the arena, and the baseball stadium that had contiguous parking. That was foresighted thinking, and we think that same way. One of the things we would recommend is a repairs and maintenance and operational endowment, and in a little while we'll show what Fargo has done in that area, so that by establishing that type of an endowment with this facility, there would not be repeated needs for repairs and maintenance in the annual budget of the City of Sioux Falls or the school district, and we will demonstrate that the Fargo model has worked very well in that manner. The ultimate decision does not rest with our ad hoc committee. We are simply here to support, to encourage, to probe, and to ask you to establish an official committee that could make those decisions needed to move this community forward. What we're asking today is that the Coliseum Exploratory Group recommend that the Sports Authority, which you have appointed members to and which the school district had, in addition to one or two more representatives from the City Council and the school board, be called together in an official task force capacity to look at this study and to see what is the preferred facility option, what private and public funding proposal would be best for our community, and what is a timetable that we could carry this forward. As we said, we believe that our key decision points should be addressed by the official task force group now and be researched and incorporated into a final plan that would be made, that the decision would be made by the City of Sioux Falls and the Sioux Falls School Board. And we would ask today, as I said earlier, that the school board, and we will ask them later this afternoon, to delay their decision on Howard Wood Field while this is being accomplished, while the official task force looks into this. The problem is, if Howard Wood Field is renovated on its current site, it will simply not make that site viable for the future, and you will see that in our study. If we proceed with Howard Wood renovation, that's the field we will have for the next 30 to 40 years. We should pause, we should step back, and I think it would be in this community's best interest to fully explore what other options might be possible. We have a proposed timeline that you can see in your handout or in our completed report. The first two phases of that are organize an exploratory group. That's what we did in an ad hoc fashion, and complete a preliminary study. And I think that you will find our study complete, and I think that you will find it interesting when you have a chance to fully review it. We would then suggest the next step would be to appoint that official task force, a task force appointed by you and the school board that could develop final recommendations. And depending upon these recommendations, you could seek school district or school board approval for that plan. After that, during the approval phase of 2009, we would need to communicate and educate for the project support. We would need to obtain legislative approval for an additional sales tax, if that is the decision that we would like to go with, and that could happen in the 2009 legislature. And we would look for final public approval and commence the project. Construction would take 24 to 36 months, at which time it could be opened. One thing that we learned in this project is that facility flexibility is important. We learned that in our studies of other facilities, and one thing that I must say is that we had tremendous support and tremendous openness from the community of Fargo. They shared with us every profit and loss statement, their operating statements, their strategic plan for the Fargo Dome. It's been in existence 15 years. Now, I know I sound like I'm overselling the Fargo Dome, but it truly is a model, we think, for what could be possible in this community. Some key factors about the Fargo Dome that I think are important. Number one, it was a 100% publicly financed facility done with a half-penny sales tax over 15 years. So for 15 years, a half a penny sales tax paid for the Fargo Dome, it will be paid in full. The building will be paid for in December of '08. So this December, their building will be paid for. It has had an operating profit every year it has been in existence. Their low profit was $7,500. Their high profit, over $750,000. And they shared those numbers with us, 15 straight years of profits. During that time, you can imagine, their sales tax grew in that community, and while the payment on the bond stayed the same, that difference with the growth in sales tax created a $30 million reserve for repairs and maintenance. So think about that a minute. December of '08, Fargo will have a Fargo Dome. It is fully active, it is paid for, and it has a $30 million reserve for repairs and maintenance. That, to me, is good public policy. And one of the things that really surprised us when we looked at this is Fargo's sales tax revenue is 40% of what Sioux Falls' is. We have a tremendous economic engine here. A half cent in Fargo annually will produce $8 million. A half cent in Sioux Falls produces $20 million. If Fargo can do it, why can't Sioux Falls? You know, many people know what the arena looks like. We felt it. We've been in it. We know how it feels to go in that facility. We've done it for many years. But many people don't know what the Fargo Dome looks like. They think, well, it's just NDSU football. In reality, they have almost 100 events a year, and NDSU football only plays there 6 times. Brad, I think we have a short video that we'd like to show that shows the versatility of the Fargo Dome, and if we could take a few minutes and do that, you have it on your screens and it will be up there.
Why is this not working? It's not working. It worked earlier. Why is it not working? It worked earlier. It's not working. Why is it not working? Why is it not working? No. Here? Why is it not working? It worked earlier. It worked earlier. I apologize.
Well, while they're seeing if they can get that to work, and it is an interesting process to see how the Fargo Dome is converted into many different types of activities. What I'd like to do is answer any questions you may have. Obviously, there will be a lot. Our report that you'll all receive today goes into much greater detail on the 2 options that we show, on what the possibilities could be with this type of facility.
Would there be any questions at this time for Dana Dykehouse? Councilor Stagers.
Yeah, one of the issues I'm very concerned about, of course, is the financing. And your presentation today seemed to talk about just 100% public financing. But several months ago, of course, we were talking about a $50 million gift from a private donor. Could you say something about the $50 million gift option? Is that still on the table? Or?
Sure. Well, I think one of the things that our committee found as we did our study, and as you'll see in our study, that there are many different ways to enter into that partnership. It could be through a naming rights opportunity. It could be through a gift naming rights or that would go on as operating cost offset. It could be in the construction phase of that. I think more than anything, before you approach any donor, you want to have a united plan in the community. No donor is attracted to a facility or a plan that does not have support from the community as a whole. And so I guess before we even approach any donor, we would want to have that plan in place, and then it would be appropriate. As we said, what we have seen throughout the upper Midwest is in Fargo, they did it, they chose as a community to do it 100% public financed. That was their choice. The Quest Center in Omaha was done with the naming rights, the Quest Center. In Sioux City, they have the Tyson Center. Again, naming rights that went along with it. So there are many different options. But the first thing you have to have is a vision and a plan before you approach a donor. And that's important to do. And we're not at that stage yet.
Would there be any other questions at this time by any of the team? Councilor Costello?
Dana, you suppose that you're successful later on today and convince the school board to delay the improvements in Howard Wood. So then the task force gets put together, and together that task force works on possible donor, the financing option,
Right.
Working with the governor and the legislature to approve that, and they would do that all simultaneously?
Yep. I think that the first step in this, the first step would be, as we've outlined, is for that official committee to come up with a plan, come up with a vision for what they want to accomplish. We show it as option A and option B. But until that plan is crystallized and supported by the community, it's difficult to move forward with that, with a financing plan. You have to have that vision for what you want to accomplish. So I think that that official task force could move forward in that fashion, but then they have to decide. The interesting thing with the school board and Howard Wood, if they go forward with Howard Wood, and that could be an option, but once they do that, then the Fargo Dome type of facility isn't possible because you need the major tenants. One of the major tenants would be obviously high school football. I mean, if you think into the future, what could you play in a large center, in a Fargo Dome type facility? Well, immediately you have the President's Bowl, the Dakota Bowl, the state high school football championships, South Dakota State game, a USD game. I mean, you go right down the list, a USF or Augustana playoffs that we found out this year with USF was played in a virtual blizzard. I mean, those are the type of events you would put in there. And if everyone goes and does their own thing, you've got no tenants. So you have to look at the tenants first. Once you have agreement on those tenants, then you can ask those other questions, donor financing and so forth.
If we wouldn't be charged, or would there be a cost for the high schools to use the new facility?
One of the things you'll find in our report is that currently the high school pays about $150,000 a year to maintain Howard Wood Field. That's what their cost is. They would have about the same cost in our financial model to move into the, call it rent, call it an offset, whatever. The cost is almost the same to utilize the new facility, and that's in the financial report.
And then one final question. Looking ahead in options A and B, you've got some cost of construction picked out here, $118,000 for option A, $98,000 for option B.
Million.
Knowing that those are estimates, of course,
Yes.
how realistic or how comfortable are you with these estimates?
We're comfortable as of today. Obviously, you're looking at construction in 2010 and 2011, so that could change for both of those. But as of today, the architectural and engineering firm we had look at it feels comfortable that would be a very good estimate of what those costs would be.
Thank you.
Councilor Brown?
Actually, it was the cost question, and he answered it. Thank
Okay, Councilor Benega?
Dana, can you tell me what Fargo considers their MSA number to be, and what's the seating capacity of the Fargo Dome?
I'm not sure what their MSA is in their four-county area, similar to ours. I would imagine ours is about 256,000, I think our report says now. I think Fargo would be similar to that.
Okay.
And so seating capacity in the Fargo Dome is right now about 19,000 for football, but they have a unique system where they move one end zone bleachers to shrink that down to about 11,000 for basketball, for volleyball, for other types of activities. And Brad, if we've got it ready to go, we can run this short videotape that shows that conversion going on. So let's go ahead and run that.
Right now, you're behind the scenes, watching the careful, choreographed transformation of the Fargo Dome. Within hours, This facility can go from a conference facility to a football arena, a concert hall, and back to a conference center. Just moments after the last attendees leave a 3-day Microsoft conference, crews begin to dismantle. At the same time, semis roll in, and another crew sets up for a rock concert the next day. Sound checks begin just hours after the last event ended. As concert goers clear the building, semis roll back into the Fargo and haul away any trace of a concert. Meanwhile, crews set up the football arena for team warm-ups, which begin the next morning. A sold-out game begins at 1 p.m. While football is big, the Fargo Dome is home to all kinds of high-energy sports action with big crowds. Its infrastructure also allows the building to be transformed into smaller, more intimate settings. As Bison fans leave the building, crews are back to transform the facility into a theater setting arrangement in preparation for the Great Plains Technology Conference. It's a pattern that repeats itself almost non-stop over the course of a year at the Fargo Dome, which hosts an event 1 out of every 4 days. At the Fargo Dome, as the curtain closes on one event, there's always another act waiting in the wings.
What we hope that does is show one model that has worked very well in a community similar in size to us. That was, in that case, 100% public financed, profitable every year of existence for 15 years. The only real difference is when you look at their model and ours is they play 6 NDSU Bison football games in that center. We would play 41 high school and some college football games in ours. All the other activities are very, very similar to what this community could potentially host.
Would there be any other questions? Councilor Benega?
Just to follow up on the other 2 questions I had, in reference to the events that are held there, do you have a breakdown from Fargo that gives how much each event generates in revenue?
Yes, we certainly could give that, get that for you, Brad.
Get you the whole package.
We'd get you the whole packet. They were, as I said, I'd like to thank the people in Fargo. They were just very gracious, gave us every profit and loss statement they've had for 15 years, their strategic operating plan and so forth. Rob Soblink is the manager there. Rob has been the manager for 15 years, or since it's been open, and has managed it every year. He came down to Sioux Falls to meet with us and share what their experience has been. Again, for the opportunity to look at what we could possibly have 20 and 30 years down the road if we did that.
Councilor Jameson?
Eddie, you mentioned the turf out there. I
Yes.
think the running track was built not too long ago. What's the life expectancy of that running track?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think that, and we could ask the school board that, I think that this plan for renovation of Howard Wood includes putting a track in again. You know, I'm not a facilities manager, I'm a banker. But I do know that practically, if we've already got an Olympic-sized track in this community, a state-of-the-art track, which we have at USF, for running a 3-day Howard Wood meet, a state meet every other year, and the middle school meets, the potential for cooperation on those events might just be an idea we should fully explore before we make that large investment in another track that won't be utilized that much. And we've made a significant investment in tracks at every one of our high schools and middle schools. So doing that over again. One of the interesting things, though, is the contract was already signed to move Howard Wood relays to the USF track during reconstruction at Howard Wood Field. So they had already planned to run out there. It got our wheels turning and saying, maybe we should explore this a little bit further. And that's what we'll be asking today, is explore it a little bit further.
Councillor Kavanaugh.
Dana, I know, sometimes it's little things that can trip us up. And
Yep.
one of the things I've heard is some discomfort among a few people who would like to see track events stay in that area.
Yep.
And I know there's a specific reason why you do not include a track in this facility. Could you explain that?
Yeah, a track inside of a Fargo Dome type facility. You would have to make that so large that you would add probably
At least
at least what?
50 million.
$50 to $100 million more to include a track inside of a Fargo Dome type facility. That's how much larger you would have to make the facility. The other thing we have to consider is the usage of that track. And I don't say this, I know that that there are many people have many years vested in Howard Wood, that it is one event, 3-day event. It's a very important event for this community, an event that we want to promote and expand and see grow. But to expand that type of dome for that event only may not be a very practical use of funds when we have an existing, when I say Olympic-sized track, the big advantage is the track is more of a circle than the oval, and I obviously am not a track person, but they say you can run faster on that type of track than making the sharp turns. So that's what we've learned in this committee meeting, that would be an opportunity to expand that facility at the USF site for those specific events.
Councillor Costello.
Dana, just out of curiosity, the gentleman that you said that came down from Fargo, is he a Fargo City employee, or do they use a third party to manage their facility as well?
They use a third party, a Global Spectrum, who manages our convention center, helped us also. They were very open to us, and along with SMG, all of the groups that are involved in this, again, I would like to thank both SMG and Global Spectrum. They were very helpful in putting these numbers together and putting these two options together about what could be possible.
Councillor Brown.
Dana, I noticed that under economic and community impact, those numbers aren't available yet.
No.
Can you talk about that?
Yeah, one thing that we did, and we would encourage the next group to do, very often when looking at a new facility, it is sold based upon the economic impact it'll have in the community. That's what ifs. If we build it, they will come and spend dollars here. We did not have the resources to do that, and so our report does not include that future-looking, what is the economic impact. We think, in fact, we know it would be an improvement to the economic activity in this community if we could recruit those type of activities in this community. We just didn't quantify it. So we would encourage the official group to take a look at that and factor that in, because that's a big factor in our community. The challenge we have today, and it brings us right back to the problem that you'll see in here, is simply taking the current arena and moving everything into a new arena doesn't generate you any more economic activity, because the days are already used up. That's why our proposal would be to expand the inventory of days to bring more events in, where we could have a boat show and a Stampede game on the same day. Now that's not possible to do those two together because we don't have the size facility or that possibility to do.
Any other questions? Dana, thank you so much for the hundreds of hours you and your team have spent on this project. And Brad Coleman, thank you for helping with the presentation today. And again, we are happy to have those of you on the task force ad hoc group, whatever it's called, in the audience. We really are appreciative of your efforts, and we are optimists, and we are leaders, and we will build an event center one way or another in the near future. And I'm hopeful on November 4th, 2008, that our state will elect legislators that will make this possible.
Thank you.
Mayor, do you have any other information for us today during your report?
That's the one I have. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mayor. Okay, we'll go through our weekly committee reports, and we'll start with the Audit Committee. Councilor Kavanaugh.
No report other than to note that later down on our agenda, we'll have Rich Oaksall, our lead internal auditor, giving us a couple reports.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. Fiscal Committee, Councilor Costello.
Last week, we heard from Mark Cotter and Mike Cooper regarding a plan to get caught up on some of our roads that we seem to be behind on, and we're looking for more, or they're bringing more information to us for next month's fiscal committee.
Okay, we'll look forward to the update on that important topic. Land Use Committee, Councilor Jameson. Okay, Public Services Committee, Councilor Brown.
We will meet immediately following this meeting in the overflow room to continue our discussion on daycares, specifically regulations.
Thank you, Councilor Brown. And at this time, I'll entertain any open discussion topics that any of you would like to bring up at this time. Councilor Staggers.
Yes, I've had a number of people mention to me about the snow plows again, putting snow in the driveways. And there are a few people that are becoming more aware of the possibility of using snow gates. So.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Councilor Staggers. Would there be any other open discussion items that any of you would like to mention or topics to bring up? Okay. Seeing none, I'll just continue with our staff report for this week. And our lead internal auditor, Rich Oaksall, will you, we're looking forward to your presentation on two audit reports, purchasing and procurement, and also the Washington Pavilion management audit. So thank you for being with us again today.
Thank you. With your permission, we'll start with the Washington Pavilion. Jane Hathaway has been waiting very patiently back there, and she is the acting interim executive director because Steve Hoffman, as you probably are well aware of, resigned, I believe, in October of last year. And she was very helpful during the audit, and in fact, the entire staff of Washington Pavilion was very helpful. I just want to make clear that this audit was not initiated because of Mr. Hoffman resigning. This was planned way back in April. It was just a routine internal audit. If you look on page 4, the objectives of the audit are there. There are basically 3 objectives: to determine compliance with financial terms. Number 2, compliance with the requirements to maintain the facility in good repair. And third, compliance with the requirement to maintain standards of performance. And within those 3 broad categories, we had a number of sub-objectives. Overall, if you look at the report, if you look at the results, they're doing a very good job with managing the pavilion. And we were very pleased with that. We looked at the 2002 web report, which was a report that the City of the Sioux Falls initiated. We hired a consultant web management group to come in and look at the operation of the pavilion. That was about 5 years ago. That was released, I think, in October of 2002. That report came out. So we reviewed that report. We reviewed financial reports. We did a lot of other audit work. But the conclusion of the web report is, I believe, in one of the last pages there, on page 13, the web report concluded that the pavilion is on track, managing the facility efficiently, using its resources. And nothing that we saw during the audit would lead us to believe that's still going on. We think they're doing a good job. They're in full compliance with the contract. With the one exception, we had one audit finding on the insurance, and that was on page 5, that the city was not always named as an additional insured. We made a recommendation. On the very last page of your report, the Washington Pavilion concurred with that they will make efforts to make sure that we are included as an additional insured. Also, I want to briefly just mention that they're making efforts to becoming having their facility accredited by the American Association of Museums. And correct me if I'm wrong, Jane, but I think in March next month you'll know if you're accredited or not. That'll be, the site visit will be next month, and they should know sometime this year whether they have achieved accreditation. And I list in the report what the advantages of accreditation are. We think that reflects well upon the pavilion, that they made the effort to go through that process, and you'll get the results of that later this year. On the appendix on page 14, we have two appendixes. Appendix 1 is basically information in general about the Washington Pavilion. The Appendix 2 on page 17, it just pertains to the Kirby Science Discovery Center. There's information in there about what percentage of the operating revenue comes from earned income, how much we support the operating budget. There's information about how the Kirby Science Center compares to other science and technology centers across the country. And there's Mr. Dykhouse in his presentation just a few minutes ago mentioned event days. If you look on page 15, we have a statistic on event days at the Washington Pavilion. We have the definition of what an event day is, and if you do the math, the Washington Pavilion is used a lot, an average of 3 events per day, each and every day of the year. And sometimes that may not be so obvious when you drive past the building, that you may not be aware of what's going on in there, but it is used a lot. And we want to point that out to you. And the very last page is the reply from Jane Hathaway on behalf of the Pavilion Management. They agreed with our recommendations, and we'll be continuing in that work. One of our recommendations was to do some anti-fraud procedures. That was a recommendation. Well, it was a conclusion of the external auditors, I. Bailey, that the problem with a nonprofit organization like this is that you don't have enough segregation of duties. I believe the accounting staff is about 3 people, including Jane. They can't always segregate the duties, and that's what the external auditor brought to the attention of the Board of Trustees. We think we can help with that. We discussed that with the Audit Committee, and they're on board with that as well. At this point, if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them, or perhaps Jane can answer your questions.
Would any of you have any questions on the Washington Pavilion audit? Councilor Stagers.
Yes, Rich, in your audit, I'm not sure if you were able to determine this, but our understanding in the past has been that one area of the pavilion that loses the money is the Kirby Science Center. Is that correct from what you've studied?
From what I saw, that I think that would be fair to say. Jane, would you have a different opinion on that, or you want to?
Jane, will you just introduce yourself formally for the listening audience?
Yes, Jane Hathaway, Director of Finance and Interim Executive Director for the Washington Pavilion. And the question was whether the Science Center is continuing to experience a deficit. And currently, the way we have our internal accounting budgeting set up is the Science Center, the Visual Arts Center, and the Performing Arts Center all have their specific budgets for their programming needs. It does not take into account the overall allocations for the city funding, the donations and contributions, and the membership allocation. So if you're looking at just the program portion, the amount that comes in for the Science Center admissions and the Cinedome, and you take away all the expenses, yes, the Science Center is at a deficit position. But we're very pleased to announce that the Science Center did better than budget for last year. And I put in a request to the city clerk's office that we come back in a few weeks and talk to you during another informational session and talk about the success of 2007.
Thank you very much, Jane.
Yes,
Councilor Stagers?
If the Science Center did better than anticipated, can we have a lower subsidy now then?
There continue to be needs at the pavilion, and we'll discuss that more in the future, too.
Are you looking maybe towards trying to reduce the subsidy? Because since I've been on the city council, we've never had a reduction. It's always been an increase.
Yes, Kermit, and we can always count on you asking that question. So we'll be talking more about it in the future. Mm-hmm.
With Councilor Benega?
Jane, the audit that you received from the external auditors, is that just a review, or do they do some compilations, or what level of audit do they perform besides the audit that we're using?
I have sent copies of that every year, and it's a standard audit where there have not been any findings. It's following the generally accepted accounting procedures. We do have a management letter every year that goes to the board.
That was my next question, is do we get a copy of the management letter also or not?
I don't know that you have received that in the past, and I'd be happy to forward that to you.
That would be great, thank
Sure.
you.
Thank you, Jane. And any other questions for Rich or Jane on this report before Rich gives the other audit report? Okay, Jane, thank you for your work at the pavilion. And Rich, will you go ahead with the other, the purchasing and procurement audit report, please?
Okay, thank you. So I wanted to thank the staff, the management and staff, especially the finance director and the purchasing coordinator for their cooperation during this audit. And this audit was part of our 2007 annual plan, and it's the first internal audit of the purchasing and procurement process. That first page has a little background on how the city purchases materials and professional services, and what is exempt from bidding. On page 2, you'll see that, and a little idea of how many purchase orders that the city goes through, over 11,000 purchase orders that we do. So we do a lot of purchasing. And when you look at how we buy stuff, we're sort of decentralized. For some things, each department can buy certain items essentially on their own. Other items, they have to go through the purchasing office in the finance department. So this report hopefully will give you a little idea of how that works. The objectives were pretty simple. We had 3 objectives: to see if the city procurements were made consistent with city policy, and number 2, that the system of controls over the process was effective, and then the third thing we looked at was the sole source procurements, to see that they were justified, documented, and in accordance with city policy. I want to draw your attention to that bottom of page 2. We want to make note of noteworthy accomplishments also, that things that purchasing is doing that we thought worthy of your review. They have the purchasing manual. It's on the intranet now. It's not just in a 3-ring binder that they have to update in a cumbersome way. If they have to do an update, they can do electronically, and city departments can look at the purchasing manual on the intranet. The purchasing division has been very proactive in requesting RFPs, even when they're not required to. They believe this results in better prices for the city, so we commend them for that. And last year they changed that sole source procurement process. They came up with a more detailed form, so forcing the departments to justify why they were not going to bid on certain items. Basically, the results were good. City of Sioux Falls procurements are being made consistent with policy. We did notice that there's been a problem with what we call after-the-fact purchase orders. After the fact means that you order the stuff and then you do the paperwork, is basically what that means. And that's not the way you're supposed to normally do it. Normally, you identify a need for something, you do an electronic requisition, get that approved by a supervisor, turn that into a purchase order, and then you tell the vendor to go ahead and send the stuff. Although the problem has improved tremendously, back in 2001, the external auditors and the internal auditors, we noticed that about 60% of the purchase orders were being done after the fact. Now that percentage is way down to, I believe it was about 27%, and we believe that with increased training, that percentage will continue to go down, and that was part of our recommendations. The controls were operating effectively: segregation of duties, how they control the bids when they come into finance, how they secure those, they log those in. We found those controls were working well. And the page 5, we talked about the sole source procurements. That's a controversial area. We had a quote from the University of Oklahoma Purchasing Department website where they made note that some people say that every purchase can be a sole source procurement, and other people say you should bid everything, that nothing should be sole source. That probably somewhere in the middle is where things should be. We looked at the entire file for 2007, and our conclusion was that the sole source or sole brand procurement is being used in a responsible way. It's documented as to justification, and we commend the purchasing department for coming up with a new form last year. And there's even more documentation now. When a department wants to buy something without bidding it, they have to jump through a lot of hoops before they're allowed to do that. So we thought that was good. We had 2 recommendations, and basically the finance department agreed with those recommendations. One was to increase training, to empower the purchasing coordinator to be able to monitor and train the people that do the purchasing out in the departments. And we'll believe that will cut down on errors and also increase compliance with policy. And number 2, that we should continue to encourage use of the what we call the P cards. Those are those corporate credit cards. They're a lot more efficient way to purchase things. We found in our research that the cost of purchasing something with a P card, I think, is about $5. When you buy something with a purchase order, it can cost anywhere from $60 to $97 to process a purchase order. So there's a lot of advantages to increasing those P card usage. And the use of P cards has been started about 10 years ago, and more and more purchases are being done that way, especially the low dollar purchases. So we encourage the finance department to keep on doing what they're doing, and they pretty much agreed with our recommendations. At this time, if there are any questions, I'll be happy to answer those.
Councilor Kavanaugh?
Rich, as with other reports that we've seen, there are recommendations, more likely than not.
Yes.
And in just about every case, they've been agreed to by the administration. My question is it going to be part of future work plans to go back and actually determine if those recommendations were carried out? Because as you know, the audit committee really has no authority to force that.
Yes, that's part of professional auditing standards that we would do that we would track that. And we will also do a report this year, at probably the end of this year, showing what recommendations have been implemented and which are still pending, especially the ones that have been accepted by management. We were very pleased that management often puts a completion deadline. If you look at that purchasing audit, they put a date when they thought they would accomplish this. But yes, we will do that, and we will report that to you every year.
Thank you.
Councilor Staggers?
Yeah, Rich, I was just curious if you could say something more about the process for purchasing something. For example, let's suppose the city council wanted to purchase one computer. How does that happen?
Well, normally you'd have to go through the IT department, that you wouldn't be allowed to purchase a computer. But it depends on the dollar value of the item. It also depends what type of item. If you're buying furniture, you have to go through the purchasing office. The system is set up that you can't, if you put a commodity code in for a desk or a chair, it's flagged by and the purchasing officer has to look at that, make sure it's on the state contract price before it goes any further. Let's say it's just a routine item under $500. The department decides how they want to buy that stuff.
Okay.
If it's between $500 and $74.99, they obtain 2 informal quotations and keep those on file.
Okay.
Once it gets to $7,500, then the purchasing office starts to take over at that point and make sure that they're getting the quotations that they need. If it's a contract item, then make sure that they're getting the contract price. And then once you get to of course, the bid limit, $25,000, then it's a competitive sealed bid. So what you're buying, the dollar value, that determines the process.
Okay.
Any other questions, Mr. Axel? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much, Rich, for your reports today and for your work every day.
Oh, by the way, for the viewing public, the reports, sometime this week, they'll be on the siouxfalls.org under the City Council, under internal audit. So if you want to see the reports, the public can always see them electronically.
Thank you very much for that friendly reminder. That's very helpful to the citizens of our city. Okay, I don't see anything else today. I would like to adjourn our informational for February 11th, and I would like to encourage any of the rest of you who are not on the Public Services Committee to feel free to join us next door as we continue our discussion on childcare. And then I'll see all of you again this evening at 7 p.m. Thank you.